What's up, everybody? Welcome to It's Not Only Football, Friday Night Lights and Beyond. I am Scott Porter. I play Jason Street on Friday Night Lights, and I am joined today by...
Zach Gilford. I played Saracen.
Mae Whitman. I played no one, but I'm just happy to be here.
And today, we're doing wind sprints.
Yeah. I don't mean to be rude, but this is kind of my favorite. I think if somebody asked me and I was in a panic about what my favorite episode was of Friday Night Lights, I think I would have to say this one.
Why would that be rude?
Well, just because it's number 3. It seems like I'm copping out. It's like, oh yeah, sure, episode 3, but it just is.
Well, that's interesting. For me, this episode is not only about football. For me, it's about a couple of things. It's about boundaries and everybody searching for them, hoping that somebody will put them back into their place, which I know from being a parent now that kids just beg for boundaries, just hopefully somebody will help them in a time where things are going crazy. But it's also about the number 3 to me. I cried 3 times this episode, and I think I need a counter for every episode to see how many times Scott cries. My wife says I'm emotional. Maybe I am.
I cry during the show a lot. I feel like an a-hole. But my wife looks over at me and she's like, "You're crying?" It's a good show.
Crying's healthy.
What was it about for you, Mae?
Well, for me, considering it's really not only about football, for me, it was actually about it's kind of almost similar to yours, where for me it was about the idea of tough love and about sort of being a leader and kind of having respect for each other and respect for your leader and kind of how to get leadership and get respect, but while still, being tough, but also tough on crime, but also still being full of love for the people. Just say no to drugs. Have I mentioned that?
I have to say, honestly, I don't do drugs. I feel high right now.
Oh my God. I just mentioned drugs out of nowhere. That's so great.
I was listening to you. I was like, I don't feel like I'm in my head. I really am not on drugs.
It's the coffee. The coffee's hitting.
And it's the tie-dye sweatshirt, which you're wearing yet again. Just making a quick note.
It looks like you're trying to copy me.
I thought maybe it would be nice for them to see us in sync.
Cool. Well, anyway, for me, no one's written in what it's about yet for me, so I didn't do my homework.
No. Awesome.
Smart. Yeah.
Well, wait.
Waiting on those.
You did do some homework, though. You do have a summary for us, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Ready,
everybody,
guys?
buckle up. Here comes Zach Guilford's episode summary. I love this. One of my favorite parts of the show.
It's
It's going to get better.
Football,
This one I actually stole from the internet.
Oh, good. Good.
You really didn't do your homework today.
Inject a little flavor into it.
It was. I know.
Damn it, Riggins.
I know it's
Truly.
December now, but it's when we're recording this. It's around Halloween, so there's just a lot going on.
Zach, listen. You played Saracen on the show. You did not play Riggins. I expect you to do your damn
But I
homework.
auditioned for Riggins.
Let it go.
God, and you didn't get it.
I'll
Move
get
on.
I promise from now on, I'll do my homework. But
Don't make promises you can't keep.
Wind Sprints, October 17th, 2006. Written by Elizabeth Heldens and directed by Jeffrey Reiner. Clear eyes, full hearts can't lose. After a difficult loss to the underdog Millbank Rattlers, the town of Dillon has turned on Coach Taylor. School officials point fingers, parents argue, and team morale is at an all-time low. As injured quarterback Jason Street begins rehab, emotion and frustration culminate in a fight, thrusting Lyla into the arms of another. Thank you, fandom.com.
Actually,
Wow.
so there's some things wrong in there. I have a couple of things to say.
Oh, boy.
I didn't actually start rehab in this. That's episode 4. I get it. I journey towards getting transferred to the rehab facility where Lyla thinks I'm going to magically get my legs back. We'll talk about that later. Also, you mentioned Liz Heldens, and I said this, a couple of pods ago that we just had an incredibly talented writers' room, and I just want to say Liz Heldens after Friday Night Lights created The Passage, which I actually think should have gotten more seasons. It's an awesome vampire show. It's really, really cool. And writes on The Orville and created The Big Leap. And just recently was writing on The Dropout and created it for TV. I mean, it's just that's just one of the writers that happened to do episode 3. So it's I just challenge everybody out there to go look at the creatives that were on this thing. So much is always made of us improving and getting off the page and all of this stuff, but our writers' room was crazy talented, y'all. But yeah. So yeah, no, I didn't go to rehab yet. I expect better from you.
It's gonna get better,
the next
guys.
summary.
I promise. The next summary. It's going to be great. It's going to be
just
funny.
Try to stay awake.
It's going to be on point.
But let's see. All right, so the episode opens, okay? Now, if you remember, at the end of episode 2, they kick the ball off, and then they don't show the game. So it opens with a game this time, and they're playing South Millbank, the South Millbank Rattlers, which you got to give a shout-out to San Marcos.
What real high school, what piece of useless information?
That's what I want to know.
This is Scott, yeah. This is my favorite thing to do, find useless information and share it with the world. South Millbank, their uniforms are actually from San Marcos. So shout-out to San Marcos.
Friday Night Lights recap podcast, and no, they tell you the teams they were pretending to be.
No, they don't. Are you serious?
I'm going to keep going on this.
I can't wait
guys,
to listen.
Go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review us there if you want to. And you can also tell me whether or not you want me to keep on telling you what real high school we were stealing the uniforms and everything of. South Millbank is San Marcos. Shout out to San Marcos, everybody out there. Woo, woo.
But he's going to keep doing it no matter what you say because we keep telling him to stop.
Yeah, he's not listening to us. Maybe if you join us and you really try, there'll be a push in the right direction.
Listen, Saracen played really well in this game. And Saracen does not get a fair shake. He throws like a 70-yard touchdown pass. The guy trips and falls down and fumbles the ball at the 5. That's Dolia, which, by the way, is like the only wide receiver's name you'll ever hear on the show. Dolia's got it again.
I know, I was like, who?
There's a lot of running backs that catch passes down in Dillon. Not as many wide receivers. We're great running back facility. But anyway, he fumbles the ball. They go into the half. They end up, spoiler alert, losing the game.
Which also, none of this is my fault, but the town decides to just poop on me like crazy.
Well, but the coach, I have to say, coach at least in the locker room is like, good game. He acts like he's going to say something scary. He's like, Saracen, and you're like, and then he's like, good game.
Well, yeah, that's because he's ripped everybody else to shreds.
Right.
You'll never see Coach more fired up, I think, in the series than you see him this episode.
I literally wrote. It's the first time we see him lose his cool.
Yes.
And blow up.
He's fuming.
I also remember that last hit at the end of the game, right at the goal line. I was like, I could do it. Let me do it. They're like, okay, we're going to hit you 50%. I was like, sweet. So I'm running. No. I take the hit. And, of course, I drop the ball. I'm like, that's only 50%. How do you hold on to a ball?
Dude, any stunt guy will tell you, though, you cannot do things half speed. Half speed is when people get hurt. That's like you do
so they hit me full speed. Cool.
You have
feel
to,
better.
But I do respect the bravery of you going out there and being like, I want to take
I
the
hope
hit.
you learned your lesson and didn't
I don't
continue
think they
that
let me
stupid
take
behavior.
any more hits.
It's so frustrating, though, because I was like, God, you're so close to the line. Would it have killed you to just get a little closer? It's fine.
Zach's only 5'8". So
I'm 5'9".
Yeah, you're right.
It's tough for him to reach out.
5'8.5", but we don't really count.
It was in the script that he actually crosses the goal line. But Zach, since he did it on his own,
right.
And they said, this actually is a better story point.
Yeah, they were like, we don't have time to keep filming.
We improv on this show so much. We even improv who won the games.
Man, almost a miracle finish, but I think it was a great idea to kind of very quickly show the audience, they're not gonna win every game. Let's make sure that people know that, there is.
And the coach isn't perfect, right? I mean, he's not going to be like, it's okay, my sweeties. You guys did such a sweet job. It's like he also has a lot on the line, as we see later when people are harassing his ass when he's just trying to eat his snack.
Well, this is a question. So I don't know. Do you guys feel this when you?
He's trying to get a snack.
What was he eating?
He was actually, it's funny you ask. He was trying to get some hamburgers, and Julia was like, enough with the burgers. Get me onion rings. I don't want to see any more cows slaughtered.
No. He brings her soy sausage, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you do. You bring her soy sausage at the pancake later. You're like, here's your soy sausage. And she's like, I literally have to go, and I don't know who you are. And you're stuck holding that soy sausage.
But I have a question. Yeah. So do you guys, when you're doing any sort of project, I'm thinking of it here, are you always rooting for your character and you feel it when he doesn't here? I remember being like, couldn't he have just scored? This sucks. This feels crappy. I mean, even right now I'm working on something where I'm playing a serial killer. I'm like, I hope he gets away. Because I understand
why he's doing what he's doing.
Okay, we need to.
The audience wants me to get away.
You need to. That's good though, because villains don't think they're villains. Usually that's a much more interesting villain to play. As a villain who's like, I am doing this for a cause, and is way more interesting when an actor plays it like that, not like I.
But do you guys get like that, or am I just a narcissist?
Yeah, I think that when I play a not so great guy,
which is when you're the nicest guy on the planet.
I played. Go find something called Pure on Hulu. I play this
Hear that,
really
audience?
crazy pastor who like wears a pistol, and it's like a father-daughter retreat. It's all about purity.
That's
and it's
good.
Like,
a scary good guy. He's like, I'm good.
And I relish like when they get their comeuppance. I'm like, yeah, all right. Because I don't know. I like separate myself from that. I'm like, as a fan, like I just want to see that guy eat it. And it's like, but I had very similar feelings for Street in this. And I think you can't help but feel for Saracen. And that's why it's so great in that moment when Coach turns and he's like, Saracen! Good game, son.
Yeah.
But not good enough.
Right.
Not nearly good enough. And then, like, we're out of the game. Meanwhile, Street is hugging a football like a teddy bear. I still have that ball, actually, signed by a bunch of the stunt guys. I think Ryan Nail's signature is on it. A bunch of other names. Nobody would know any of these people. Yeah, but I'm, like, hugging it.
Again.
And
but
then,
what were the uniforms?
That scene was so...
Wait, I actually need to... Can we real quick pin in that?
Sure.
When you mentioned uniforms... So I'm after the pilot, we got new uniforms, and they're so crappy and ugly. And I don't know why we didn't keep the same uniforms. And then season 2, we go back to the original uniforms, and I know Under Armour became a sponsor.
What was the difference? Just the quality?
No, they were a totally different design.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice.
Yeah.
It's not about football or fashion for me,
I genuinely, that whole season, every time we had to put on our uniforms, I was like, these stupid uniforms.
I still
just have the ones from the pilot. I have my pilot
I
uniform.
have my home and away jerseys. And I still wear them on occasion. But then I have a number of those really crappy ones, too. And I sign them and auction them off for charity.
You were just stealing wardrobe left and right. Look at you.
Well, this was a gift.
Scott's wearing a Dylan football sweatshirt.
Yeah, if you're not watching us, please know that you can watch this. If you want to see Zach's
all the crap
hat.
It doesn't sound so good when you say it like that, Porter.
Phrasing, Scott. You can watch us as well, so and find us in video form. But yeah, I'm wearing a Dylan football hoodie that we got.
I have a Panther football shirt on.
Nice.
Just so you guys know,
That's
I got
from
it from
the NBC
Tatum's
store, right?
I don't know. Jason Tatum's gave it to me probably to get me to be quiet because I was always going on and on about how I felt left out.
I have one last question, and then we can get back to the episode.
Of course.
And maybe you'll have different opinions, maybe the same opinions. So I have this sweatshirt as well as a season 1 wrap gift. And I used to run in it. I didn't wear it out in the world, but I would run in it. And my wife was like, you can't wear Dylan Panthers gear out in the world. You're just asking people to recognize you. And I said, it's not even the right colors. It could be any Dylan football.
Yeah, you can. I don't know. I used to. So they also gave us a backpack at the end of season 1, an OGO. And I wore that thing out until all the straps fell off. It was the best backpack I've ever had. And I would use it everywhere. And then somebody called me out on a plane. They were like, dude, does that backpack say Friday Night Lights and you're the guy from Friday Night Lights?
No, you're not allowed to, but I thought this one I could get away with because it's not the right colors.
No, I told him I earned this. Of course I can wear it in public.
I earned this.
I
have to. I'm right down the middle here, guys, and here's why. I'm like, again, after doing this for 32 years, I have so much weird stuff that I have accumulated over the years from projects that I've been a part of. And I'm like, there is this thing about you feel so proud. You want to show it off. You're like, I'm so lucky. I love this thing. I do think you're begging for a conversation to be started with you. Even you can't, it would be Dylan football. Yeah, you're from Dylan. So somebody's going to see that and be like, yeah, sure, that could be any Dylan. And they're like, but it's that Dylan because that's Matt Saracen.
So I'm not asking people to pull me over when I'm on a run.
Well, listen, you're going to get pulled over.
You know what it is? I just learned this term. It's a thirst trap.
It's a
oh my God.
Okay.
I need all the extra energy I can get this holiday season, and that is why I drink Spark. It's Advocare's best-selling energy drink mix and my go-to for extra energy and focus this time of year. Spark has just the right amount of caffeine I need for busy days, B vitamins to support my body's natural ability to make and sustain its own energy, and neuroactive ingredients to keep me focused and alert. Things are bonkers this time of year. We're trying to get presents. We're trying to make it seem like they're from Santa. We're trying to travel to see family in other countries for the holidays. And I can barely do it on my own. And thank goodness for Spark, because it gives me the energy and focus I need so that I don't crash in the middle of all this craziness that's going on this time of year. Spark is a great gift for givers and receivers this holiday. My favorite flavor is mystery flavor, because you never know what you're going to get. It's kind of like a present under the mistletoe. Grab a bag of Spark for someone on your gift list, or treat yourself this holiday season when you go to advocare.com/FNL. Get 15% off your first order when you shop advocare.com/FNL today.
So that scene was tough for me. This is going to be ridiculous and very embarrassing.
Should we put up a Twitter poll?
Okay.
I was in the hospital. In the real hospital, we were shooting that scene where I'm like hugging and then the team loses, and then I'm like watching. My mom's like, do you think you want to watch this? And I'm like, leave it on, Mom.
Yeah. You're starting to get a little angsty.
But then I look out the window, and it was the first time I ever had to give that
view
1,000 miles. Yeah, but that stadium's not really there.
Yeah, I had a guess that it wasn't Scott Porter. I didn't think you guys scouted the one hospital room in all of Texas that had a perfect giant view of the fake stadium.
It was the first time I ever had to act like something was there that wasn't there.
Oh, wow.
It was maybe the most nervous I was filming this entire episode.
It's brutal. You're staring at a green screen. You're like, look at that.
It wasn't even a green screen. It was just a window. It's like an interstate. And I was like, what are you going to do? They're like, we're going to scrub it out in post. And I was like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, speaking of pretend,
do
you remember, was that nurse a real nurse or an actress?
Both of them, yeah. Both of them were. Dolores and Danielle, both of the nurses, they were real nurses.
That's cool.
Our show was huge on finding people that actually did the thing that you needed them to do. And the pilot, the paramedics are real paramedics. Dolores, Danielle, real nurses, because they are the ones that can guide me through how everything would authentically be. So
I have to pop in here now and say quickly, do you have any funny memories of what you've had to look at that's not really there? I mean, I've looked at some of the I've acted with things that aren't there. I'm like reacting, but we had this one recently on Up Here, the show that Scott and I just did. Which there's like this scene where we're, Carlos and I are like the whole point is that we're staring at this incredible view of the Brooklyn Bridge and just talking about all the things that we see in the skyline. And it is just nothing. It's a green screen with like little tape marks that's, little X's. And we're like, God, can you believe the beautiful? And there's like a, crew guy in the back, like eating a bagel and stuff. And I mean, I just was like, this job is so strange.
You didn't
sometimes.
go Christian Bale on the bagel guy?
I didn't. I was like, you eat that bagel. You're helping me. I did the opposite.
Nice.
I yelled at him for being so helpful.
I did Speed Racer, and so pretty much nothing in that film was real. So I just stared at a ton of tennis balls on various posts all over, and then did a couple of full races on racetracks and something called a gimbal, which, okay, fine.
What is
nerdy,
a gimbal?
Not interesting time.
This I'm fascinated by.
I'm into now.
For Speed Racer, they had video game designers come in and design the tracks, and then they would race their own tracks as a video game, and get the fastest time they could. And then they would take all the inputs from racing that video game car on the video game track, and they would put it into a real stunt unit. It's called a gimbal. And basically, it has a bunch of hydraulics underneath it, and they built a little tiny cockpit for the Mach 4, which was my character Rex Racer's car. And I would sit in it, and then all of those maneuvers that the guy had raced via controller in the video game, the gimbal would move that way, would drift to the left or drift to the right or leap or do any of those things, all of those movements that were inputted. And then I would sit in there, and I would have to know, oh, we're making a left turn here. Oh, we're making a right turn here. I didn't even have rear view mirrors on the thing, and I'd have to be looking at the rear view mirror, checking who's behind me, and then I got to drift this way, and then I got to be looking to the right while the car's going left. That was the craziest. What about you, Zach? Anything that you had to...
we've all had them. I think one of my favorites, though, was I was working on the show Midnight Mass, and it's like towards the end of the show. Thank you. But it's like this big scene where I'm in a boat in the middle of water with my co-star. And we film it literally my second day of shooting. We're on this like big stage in Vancouver, and it's just a rowboat on like a cart. And then they have like troughs of water for me to like row. And then there's literally a grip laying on the floor. Grip's like a lighting guy with a bucket of water with a light shining on it. And he just every now and then like taps it to give it like a ripple in the lights. And I was like, this looks like the bad high school play when we like push the boat on. It's like crick, 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 and I'm pretending to row, and the whole audience is like,
a cup of water in your
face. They put a boat on the stage. That's so amazing. That's so impressive. And it was just like, wow, Netflix. Great.
Which also I have to say, I went last thing. I visited the set of Perfect Storm, hold your applause, because I was, after playing George Clooney's daughter, I stayed very good friends with him, and so he invited me to come to see the set, and they built, this is like the opposite of your sad rowboat, they built in a soundstage, they built an entire like giant ocean tank, like a full ocean that had like scuba divers in like a giant basin that had like a full ocean with the boat on the
take
ocean.
That midnight mass.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry. And like they had scuba divers in there, and I remember you had to take a little boat out to get to the big boat. And I was on the little boat, and George just thought it would be funny. He's a big prankster. He thought it would be funny to pick me up and dangle me in the water, like my little feet, like dangling in the water, and he was like, "I'm going to drop you in here, and you're going to drown."
How old did you panic like a cat?
I was probably
and, like make him drop you.
I was probably like 10. No, I thought it was hilarious. I was a little scared, but I also thought it was a little funny. He was very good at riding that line of making you a little scared, but also a little scary. I think my story's better.
I wish May would have like a cat and a bat like scratched his face, and she falls in the tank.
No, I'm pretty cool, man.
Oh,
I'm pretty cool. I can take it.
Okay.
So back to the hospital.
Well,
yeah,
wait,
we're in the hospital.
Hold on. Two quick things. God, we're never going to get through this episode.
They like it.
You know who wrote the code for the wave in A Perfect Storm?
No.
Masioka, who played Hiro on Heroes, the show that came out the same year as Friday Night Lights. I remember going on press tour with this, and I became really good friends with Masioka. And he, before being an actor, was a coder.
That's fascinating.
ILM still has to call him back because he's like at this point like this archaic code. But whenever they need to use a wave in a movie, so you'll see Masioka's names pop up. I think I saw it in Bullet Train.
Wow.
I think they might have used some of his old archaic text in Bullet Train. Anyway, shout out Masioka.
So do a poll if you thought that was more interesting or what uniform.
San Marcos. Yeah. I'm useless information guy. That's
we
fine.
Can wear Friday Night Lights gear.
But I also. When you were talking about riding on this little rowboat on a stage, now I do like performance capture for a bunch of video games.
That's awesome.
I'm in God of War, the one that's out right now. I play Heimdall, and I have a war beast that I ride around on.
And what does that look like when you do motion capture for the people at home?
What it looks like is they throw a couple of rugs over a couple of pieces of wood, and then 4 dudes with different ropes on different corners of this thing yank me around the stage, and I'm in like a full like wetsuit with little glowing balls all over it, playing this like I'm acting like I'm on this giant badass war beast. But really, I've got the picture. I'll share it after this episode comes out on socials or whatever.
See, this is what you get when you go on tangents. Yeah. You get to see Scott in little glowing ball wetsuit.
But what I wanted to talk about was I kind of really like.
I can't. I wish you guys could see what I'm
reading
seeing,
my notes
because there's like 700 pages of the most hilarious notes that
Well, anyway,
I'm going to start reading. There's going to be a section called "Over Your Shoulder," and it's going to be me choosing one thing to read. It's embarrassing.
Speaking of our writers writing great scenes and walking a great line, I kind of love when Lila's in the hospital with you, and this hospital handy turns into like. A different kind of wet bed.
Handy?
Okay, so you're like laughing and calling it a hospital handy. I'm crying.
And a different kind of wet bed.
No, it was really uncomfortable to watch.
So Zach's talking about a scene where Lyla comes in and she is like, "You're going to get your legs back. We're going to get you transferred to that rehab facility. We're going to hold a pancake supper and it's going to pay for everything." I'm like, what kind of delusional woman is? But that's where she's coming from. She has very strong faith. She thinks, she prays, things happen, like these things are going to happen. Jason, you're going to be fine. And then she starts like making out with Jason. And in that moment, you can actually, like, from all the research that I've done, the feelings still bounce back and forth in your brain. So a feeling of pleasure still actually lands, even though he's paralyzed below the shoulders, he can still feel things down there. And these pleasure receptors are going off, and then she's like, "Oh, the bed is wet," and she has pulled Jason's.
And what I think is so genius about it is it takes that, because I feel like that's the moment where you get the first glimmer of Minka's character saying, "Oh, things are going to be a little different. Mm-hmm. Oh, this isn't what I expected," and that's jokes
and
aside.
For you, the whole situation of realizing how, I mean, the pain that you like show in that moment, Scott, of like the sort of the caretaking element of this, of what's going to be required and how that's going to change things. I just think it's such a like vulnerable and tender and like effective moment in that. It's one of those ones that really like it gets my heart, right in the sore spot. I thought that was a really beautifully acted situation.
Oh, well, thank you. It's another situation where they set you up for success as far as like an actor by putting you, like, I'm in a real hospital and I'm really in this position, and I've really met at this point, I've talked to countless individuals who have suffered catastrophic spinal injuries. There was a guy that bought a TV at Best Buy and he went home and he carried it upstairs by himself and came back down to get a jug of milk and some orange juice that he had bought at the grocery store. And as he was walking back to the stairs, he sat down and he never stood back up. Just carrying this TV upstairs to install it, he had done something to his back, and this injury had happened. He became a paraplegic, so he lost use of 2 of his limbs, and he never walked again. And his fiance came downstairs and was like, "What's going on?" And he's like, I don't know. And so I've got those stories bouncing around in my head, and they stay together. But I've heard also at this point a lot of relationships, like a very high percentage of people who were dating or were engaged before an injury like this happens. It's like 80% plus that those relationships fall apart. And so I'm already kind of envisioning like, oh, this is – and because I had all of these conversations and was allowed to know all this information and everything, it just put me in a place when I was doing that scene. It's so emasculating, and it's so just – for this guy who was he was a champion, he was a competitor, and now he can't even go to the bathroom. Like, I mean, it's just, and it's so embarrassing for this kid. So, thank you, but for saying that. But it's just like the scene is written so well and performed so well, and that journey for those 2 young people who had the biggest dreams, like just immediately, like you said, Zach, starts to just crash at that point. So yeah, that's a tough scene. Took me back.
Okay. That was heavy.
Sorry.
No, I don't mean that. No, not bad. It's kind of like,
well,
sometimes you're like,
it's why the people are here, right?
No,
you have some vulnerable moments in this too, not to drag you into this, but you have like a few vulnerable moments in this, and like, especially with Tammy, I really love that when you have that scene with Tammy, where you're sort of, she kind of is one of the first people who actually asks you how you're doing, because you sort of start to see your journey in this, and Saracen's journey of just how much this kid is carrying on his shoulders and like what he's having to deal with. And you just, again, it's setting it up sort of. But I think it's like for you to start to really get this idea of how much pressure you're under and how sort of, yes, football is important, but you have like a whole world of really seriously real life problems. And especially, when Tammy sort of is the first person who asks you how you're doing. One thing I really loved about your character is like, how you actually are open with her, and it shows how you're receptive. It shows how you're open. It shows how you're okay with being vulnerable. And I think that's really something special. And it's like a slight edge that you have over Tim Riggins, which is that he's so like rude and defensive and doesn't want to be helped, but you are brooding and you're quiet and you're dealing with all this stuff, but you also are really open and kind and have like this open heart and want to be vulnerable. And I think it's cool that Tammy, because she's the counselor now at the school.
Yeah, and it goes, I mean, I remember, we'll talk about it more, but you do see how she's good at her job, and like they speak to it later in later episodes, but just how hard her job is. And my mom was actually a high school social worker, and I've had friends who've said to me, I never would have graduated high school if not for your mom.
Wow.
Or like, I would not be alive right now if not for your mom.
I gotta chill.
And it's I always had such a respect for Connie's character in so many ways, but also I think it was so cool because there's a whole next episode's kind of about this, but kind of the difference between the way both of them have to interact with these high school kids.
Right.
Coach, the way he interacts and the way Tammy
and what the responsibilities of that are.
Yeah.
And also within all that, you're seeing like how all these pressures are building and how Matt's dealing with it. And also a big part of this episode is what Taylor's, the way he's dealing with all of this.
Yeah.
And this is one where he walks out of practice.
Yeah.
He
leaves
practice,
and the other coach is like, he thinks it's his fault that Street got paralyzed. And,
oh, man.
Because the guy just can't come see you at the hospital. And it's really brutal because everybody comes. I mean, for God's sakes, I don't know if it's this one or the next one, but at one point Tyra comes. I mean, people that in your life that you wouldn't necessarily would think would come and visit and check in with you, and for you to like not have your best friend kind of come and have this. I mean, to see what the difficulty is between, and I think for your character too, one thing that we've sort of discussed before, but it's fascinating how how everybody's different people are sort of dealing with your experience almost independent of you and what your character's experience is and sort of what they need it to be in order to get through it. I mean, Lila's kind of denial and not really reading the situation about what you actually really need. And, you know, and Tyra actually honestly being sort of one of the only characters that directly communicates with you about things. But, you know, Riggins being like, I'm too emotional to go. I can't. I'm scared. I'm this. You know, it's amazing to see people kind of dealing with grief, but almost how alone you are going through it, you know?
Yeah. And to take it back to kind of what I thought the episode was about with boundaries.
Yeah.
And Tim is just crying out for somebody. Billy, who is played by Derek Phillips, so magnificently played by Derek Phillips, is not a father figure. And Riggins doesn't have one. Mm-hmm. Riggins doesn't have anyone to go to outside of Jason's family, which you discover there's this beautiful little scene. Kat Willis, who plays Street's mom, she comes up and she sees Riggins in a parking lot. She's like, I know you haven't seen Jason, but listen, just because he's in the hospital doesn't mean you can't come to Tuesday dinner. And she just sheds a little light. She doesn't. And she's not guilting him. No. But it lets you know, like, oh, Riggins once a week goes to like Street's house. And that's like a glimpse into what a real family that is. Families come in all shapes and sizes. But for Riggins, that's like the picture of like system. Maybe that support system. And he feels like he can't go to them either because he's blaming himself. Well, and then you've got Smash, who is like doing this whole, I'm going to be the leader, give the ball to me. Coach doesn't know what he's doing anymore. Like he's acting against Coach in a way because he sees his future slipping away because of Street's injury. So he's doing things and acting out of character. Well, not out of character, but acting out. Mm-hmm. You know, he goes on TV and he gives an interview where he's like, Coach just needs to listen to me. I need to coach this team. Give me the ball. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that leads to what happens in the end of the episode. But
well, and I think one thing, and this is, and May, I know you can still play high school.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad we got to do college.
Excuse me, be quiet. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure.
After my facelift, I will be able to still play high school.
Perfect.
Okay? Oh.
Yeah. But, and obviously so happy to have played this show. And I think this is, with casting, I think there's some things where you don't want to watch 16-year-olds doing some of the things that happen on high school shows. It's a little weird to watch. But the flip side to that is we lose track of the fact that these are 15, 16-year-old kids. Like Riggins is theoretically 15 or 16 years old, and he doesn't have any parents, is what you said about his, like, how else is he going to deal with this? Yeah. He's clearly not evolved in any way. I don't mean that as an insult, to handle these feelings that are magnificent. Yeah. And what you're, I mean, down to your character, down to my character. I always said when I would talk about Saracen is all the pressure's on this kid, and he's a kid. Yeah. He's 15 years old, and he's taking care of his grandma, supposed to be the quarterback, blah, 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 blah.
People make fun of, like, people a lot of times will be like, I just want to listen to Nirvana, which is like a line that Jason Street yells much later in the series. But he does it in this scene, in this episode. Jason lashes out at Lyla and is like, in that scene, I remember so in my audition process, and I don't think I talked about this in the first pod that we did, but they threw Derek Luke's scene from Boobie Miles finding out he had a torn ACL from the movie at the Jason Street actors at the test. And I had to do Derek Luke's scene. And Derek Luke is brilliant. And I was like, I'm not going to have a flood of tears. I'm not sitting in a car, like, talking about my future ending. So I did Derek Luke's scene, like, deadpan, like, in shock in the test. And Pete really responded to that. And so the scene with Lyla, where I'm telling her, you know, my legs are never going to work again. Notre Dame, gone. My future, gone. Us, we're not getting married. Like, all these things. I initially performed just in that same state of shock because I thought maybe they used that as a placeholder knowing that this scene was coming up. Right. And they responded to that in my audition, so maybe I should do that scene the same way here. So I did it, and then the director comes in, and he's like, yo, no, dude, I need you to lose your crap here. I need you to lose. And I'm like, but I don't know if I feel. And he's like, no, dude, you're a kid. Your future's gone. This girl's coming in here. She yanked your catheter out earlier. Like, she's telling you you're going to walk again. You're hearing it from everybody. People are praying for you. It's all bullshit, and you know it. So I need you to lose it. And I was like, okay. And he's like, you're a kid. And that's the thing. That immaturity, that temper, that temper tantrum comes from him being that young and frustrated without the life experience of how to, like, properly navigate this thing. And again, Jason's like searching for boundaries. He thinks he already knows what they are, but he needs everybody in his life to understand, like, I'm not walking again, so can we all get on the same page so I can move forward? Like, you know.
And that director, I need to give a quick shout out. That was Reiner, Jeffrey Reiner.
Oh, hell yeah.
He was our producer director on the show, so people who don't know, a lot of times on a series, you'll have one director who's also a producer who's kind of there throughout, will direct multiple episodes throughout a season, and they're kind of there for when new directors come in to kind of make sure they understand the way the show works and keep the tone consistent. And
helpful.
It's so helpful, and he picked up right where Pete left off. And I attribute so much of this series. Obviously, Pete set it up, Cadence wrote it, and Reiner was the guy on set just making sure, like, this show was what it was. And, because he would get things like that where he's like, no, Scott, like, I trust your instincts, I trust your thoughts, but, like, you got to remember all the things you just said.
And it's crazy with episodic, like you're saying, that oftentimes in episodic television, you have all these different directors just coming in to do one episode, and it can be really scary and almost in the way of what we were talking about with like leadership and boundaries and all this stuff. It's like it kind of is another area where, at least we had this on Parenthood a lot, where we had Larry Trilling, who was our producing director, and it was like it felt so great to just know that somebody had your back there and somebody at least understood where you were coming from with your take on the things. And like that to me was such a good way of like leading our ship, was like having people who really understood the tone and really understood what everyone was trying to say and what the messages were that needed to come across, and that like you were going to be kept on track, that you weren't going to be, pulling a smash and doing this and that. Like you were able to play around with things because that you had people who were communicating openly about what needed to be communicated in all of those scenes.
Still on the fence about which SUV to get? Waiting to hear the reviews? Well, I got some news. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 beat out 32 other SUVs to win Motor Trend's 2023 SUV of the Year. 32. They picked us. And it's the first time they've ever chosen an all-electric vehicle for this award. So not only does it deliver on utility, it also has all the benefits of being electric. I'd say that's a win-win. And there is more. To quote Motor Trend directly, they said the Ioniq 5 is a game-changing rethink of what an SUV can be, and that in this year's incredibly competitive crop of SUV of the Year contenders, the Hyundai was well ahead of the pack. Their words, not mine. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The reviews are in, and they are spectacular. The Hyundai Ioniq 5, Motor Trend's 2023 SUV of the Year. When it comes to award-winning driving, we're thinking of every mile. Hyundai, it's your journey. Available in limited quantities and select states only.
I'm going to shift to the adults in the town because the parents in this town need boundaries too.
Oh, yeah.
There's a scene in the Alamo Freeze where this dude with a, Dillon Panther State Championship ring, like verbally accosts a 15-year-old girl in Julie Taylor and like, hey, have you started packing yet to get out of this? It's one loss. It's one loss. Yeah. What is going on? Buddy is going way, way outside of what he should be doing. He's a booster, sure. Yeah. Everybody out there, if they don't understand what boosters are, they're people who they contribute money to a program, whether it be in high school or college, to, build facilities to give those kids every chance to succeed.
But they're essentially buying like an opinion on it, like to have input and access.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question about the regulations too. Don't forget to talk about that. The recruitment regulations.
I'm getting there right now because he brings up the idea, and this kind of lets you know what time capsule Friday Night Lights takes place in, because quite honestly, like up to this point, I've been going, well, this could happen now. This could be right now. This show feels like it could be right now. But then they mention Hurricane Katrina and VooDoo Tatum, this kid out of Louisiana, and you kind of go, oh, okay, this is when it happened. Mm-hmm. This is a story almost 20 years ago. And Ray Tatum, VooDoo, played brilliantly by Aldous Hodge.
Aldous was amazing.
Seriously.
Dude, he walked in and immediately you knew, oh,
so
shit,
intimidating.
This guy is trouble.
I'll never forget, Kyle told me, he said, did you meet VooDoo yet? And I was like, no, I didn't meet him yet. He goes, he shook my hand and it was like up to my elbow.
Wow.
Dude.
He was like the perfect casting.
Dude, perfect casting. And he, Buddy, being he, is like, look, this kid's down here. I say we go get him, let him come to Dillon. Clearly, like really blurry lines here. The school recruiting violations. In high school, you cannot recruit. In high school, it is not allowed. And, Buddy takes Coach to the hotel room that VooDoo and his family are staying in.
It's like a mob deal.
VooDoo clearly has. Well, this happens, in football all the time. But also happens in like AAU ball for basketball. kids are constantly recruited to these private schools that it's less likely that it happens at public schools for the most part, but you are not allowed to tamper, or the coach definitely shouldn't be there giving a recruiting pitch to a high school kid. This kid's family should settle down somewhere, and then he should just naturally play in whatever district he's in. But Buddy starts promising him, we can find you a home. We can probably get your dad a job. We can maybe set up a Hurricane Katrina relief fund,
Buddy.
Which is like, that's way outside the lines. But what I love in that moment is Coach is the one in this episode who sets the boundaries back for almost everyone.
Because he says the thing about the start. Coach is like, whatever, the stuff. And then he goes, you promised to start. And Coach is like, oh, hell no.
No. Yeah. He goes, yeah, we can even give you the start. I'm going to start, right? And Buddy goes, yeah, I'm sure we can work that. And he goes, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. Listen, you can go to Arnett Meade, which I'll tell you what school Arnett Meade is based on next episode.
Oh, God.
Stay tuned for fun facts.
You can go to Arnett Meade, or you can come here, and you can try and earn a starting spot, because starting spots are earned. They are not given. You can go and play at Arnett Meade, but they're going to have a short season.
Yeah, that was cool.
Oh, my God. He's so good in that moment.
I don't get it, but I know that's a diss.
I gotta say, you guys gotta sometimes just tune in and watch this on
I was going to say
YouTube,
the acting.
because it's Scott
is
whenever he starts
acting.
quoting, he like reenacts the parts.
It's so exciting.
It's so fun.
I felt like Lyla when you were
here.
telling me that you wanted me to stop, like denying. You were looking in my eye and telling me to stop, and I was like, I'm sorry. I dreamt of a life for us. I apologize for that.
Yeah, okay, fine, all right. I know. Okay.
No, it's good. That was a compliment.
Yeah, it's a compliment.
But at the end of the day, Coach is like, no, okay, buddy, here's the boundary. VooDoo, here's the boundary. Come in and show me what you got. And you can go far. You can play for the number one team in Texas. We can win a championship. You can go very far. This is about your life and your career. So come here and earn a spot. And we find out later in the episode the pitch works, right? Meanwhile, Buddy is kind of put back. And you can't keep. Brad Leland is so good at being
so good.
Buddy.
I'm obsessed.
One of the greatest characters in all of Friday Night.
I got to say, this is one of my favorite Brad Leland stories.
Okay, let's go.
So it's such a long story. I'm trying to shorten it. But basically, Brad was like, hey, guys, like the Packers are playing the Cowboys on Thursday night football, and I get us tickets. Like, you guys want to fly up there from Austin, and we'll see the game, and then we'll come back or whatever. And we're like, yeah, great. Oh, you got tickets? Cool. So we literally fly to Dallas, go to the stadium, and we show up. He's like, yeah, my buddy was supposed to leave me some tickets. And they're like, what? There's no tickets for you? He's like, what? No. So then he finagles to get us press passes, which basically get us up where literally the cameras are, so above the upper deck.
Yeah, he says the announcer of the Cowboys owes him a favor, and the next thing you know.
So you're in the worst seats in the whole house. And you're just like, this is classic, Buddy. Totally overpromised. And it ended up being crazy because we went down to, whatever, the box area to get something to eat, because it was literally the snack table for the camera guys. It was
continue.
Long story short, we end up downstairs getting some food, and it's in the box area, and someone recognizes us because Scott's wearing a Friday Night Lights shirt.
Damn
it! And they invite us into the box, and it's the owner of the Dallas Stars, and then another person recognizes us, and the next thing we know, we're on a private. Oh, you chickened out. We end up at a club. And then me and Jeff Reiner and David Nevins.
No, I had to work the next day.
So did I. But I was with my bosses. I was
David Nevins. You go anywhere with David Nevins.
We end up on a private jet to Shreveport, Louisiana.
Shreveport and played in a riverboat casino all night.
I love Shreveport.
And then and halfway through the night, David Nevins freaked out. He's like, I gotta be sure I'm back in
I'm the boss of
whatever.
A giant
a huge network.
David,
and he's like, I have a meeting.
I apologize.
I love you, David. You're so chill.
So he gets on a plane. He goes and hops on a plane to get back to LA at 2 a.m. And I'm like, I'm still with Jeff Reiner, so I'm still with my boss. So I guess it's okay. And then the next morning we wake up and they're like, hey, you guys, you need to go back to Austin. We're like, yeah. They're like, cool. And we get on a private jet and they fly us back to Austin. I get off the plane and walk straight to the field.
No.
Yeah.
That's
it was crazy.
Insane.
It was insane.
Well, it sounded like you needed some boundaries, which brings me back to the most important part. The reason why this episode is technically my favorite is the friggin' mud, the mud area, the mud scenario that happened. What, just the fact that finally coach is like, okay, you know what? That's it. It's late, but I want you to get everybody on a school bus. Don't tell them what's going on.
Yeah.
Get in the car. We're going on a trip. And everybody's like, what's going on?
Yeah,
and then all it starts raining.
Smash gives this interview on TV.
Yeah. And it's like he's rude. He's talking about, bad things. Everybody, it's basically like, it's like coach is like the Caesar Milan. He's like, we need boundaries. He's like, I got to get this pack mentality back together where it's like kind of like you were saying, everybody's acting out and they kind of need to see that there's a leader. And it's like somehow coach is able to be really tough and he does this thing and he makes you all go out in the rain and run in a river up a hill. I don't know why, but you have to do it and it's important. And at first you're all fuming and then you see this moment where it turns. You see you're like doing this horrible thing and you're complaining and you're sort of like a fractured group and then all of a sudden there's this moment and I think somebody who starts it off, isn't it you?
It's Smash.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I was like, that's not a character.
Saracen's balls haven't dropped yet.
Yeah, your voice hasn't changed either.
Atoning for like his. So earlier in the episode, Riggins walks off the field, quits the team.
Yeah.
Smash gives this interview at night, and then what you were saying, Kyle gets on the phone. By the way, nobody does a phone call. Acting on a phone call better than Kyle Chandler.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an easy thing to do because you do not hear anybody on the other side of that call. You just memorize your lines for the most part, right? Unless you have somebody reading the lines off camera.
Gotta have that.
But he's so good in that phone call to Mac, and he's like, get them together.
He's like, I don't care. He pretends he's getting interrupted. I love that.
But yeah, he gets them all out there, and then he's making them, and it's just like, now you're starting to understand this is 15 years ago. Coaches in California probably can't get away with this, but I think coaches in the Midwest could probably still get away with this. But this is at like 11 o'clock at night. At this point, it's like 11 o'clock at night, and they are running wind sprints up a hill.
In the rain.
I was laughing because you were sleeping. I was like, oh my God, Saracen's such a dweeb. He's asleep at 11. Everybody else is like eating at the diner. And you're
I did think that was funny because I was like, oh, I'm sleeping. And then there's someone at the I'm like, who's this kid
Everyone
at the diner at 11 p.m.?
You're like,
I want to know, Zach, from you in a second, like what this was like that night. But I went. I wasn't in the scene, but I was so depressed in my apartment and everything else that I was doing because I was shooting multiple episodes worth of stuff in the hospital room. And I was taking work home with me. And I was like, I have to get out of this. I cannot do this to myself. I was like sobbing every night. Like it was weird because I didn't know any better. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
This was my first show ever. And I'm taking all this heavy crap home with me. So I went and I watched, and man, I cried my eyes out. It was so cathartic watching these guys run up a hill. I didn't have to do it myself. But Coach is like hearing Kyle scream, champions don't complain.
Yeah.
Champions give 200%. They don't quit. Championships are earned. It's so good.
Were you tired and cold?
Oh, it sucked.
Yeah.
It sucked so bad.
How many times did you have to do it?
I don't remember, but you can't act that. So you have to run full tilt up a thing in the rain. And I do remember, your quads start cramping up and stuff. You're like, gotta run through this.
Yeah.
And you're kind of trying to not be the slowest, but you're with the actual football players are there too, so they're better athletes than you. But yeah, and it's freezing cold because it's raining. Luckily, it was still early enough in the summer where it wasn't too cold.
Yeah, and it was manufactured rain. They brought this huge...
Yeah, we didn't luck out.
Yeah, they bring... There's this thing called condors that usually, for anybody not in the film industry, if the sun's too bright one day and you need to, dull the sun, how do you dull the sun? You bring this giant screen that they elevate up 2 stories into the air to block the sun from you in a scene.
If you need a dramatic rain scene.
They can also...
You just waste a lot of water.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They come and they just fill this huge trough with water and they just make it rain. And but I love in this scene that even his assistant coaches who have been questioning him all episode, Coach finds out that Mac McGill has seen the game tape on VooDoo already over at Buddy's house. Everybody has already made the decision for him. And in this scene, Mac goes, "Hey, Coach, don't you think they've had enough?" And he turns around and he goes, "I say when they've had enough.
I'll tell you when I've had enough." That classic line. And of course, then of course, after it all is said and done, and the rain has stopped, and everybody's tired, but they're inspired. They're getting back on the bus, and of course, Coach stops Riggins, and is like, hey, you can't listen, you're great, you can't do that though, basically.
We're cool.
Yeah, where he's basically like, he gives him like, again, the thing that Coach is so famous for, which is the tough love, where you understand that it's what needs to be done, but you really can feel the love underneath it. And I think Riggins, it's the first time you kind of see Riggins crack and have a little bit of vulnerability, and he says, this is not your fault, I need you to let yourself off the hook. And it's so powerful. And then he's like, okay, I will. And then he starts to get on the bus and he's like, you're walking home. And so, like, of course,
you owe me a
Riggins
practice.
has to, like, you owe me a practice, and never do that again. And so, of course, then, my poor sweet Riggins is walking home, and he's tired and he's cold. What's going to happen?
Well, I'll tell you what happens. Lyla conveniently drives by in her PT Cruiser, which, I don't know, do you know this?
That's
No,
not
but
a
I
PT
was-
Cruiser.
Is this an homage?
That car is a PT Cruiser lookalike. That car is not a PT Cruiser.
Okay, well, the reason why Scott is so...
I was dying laughing. I was like, we have to talk about this.
Scott's so adamant about the PT Cruiser is because when we were shooting this first season, I think for years later, Scott
entire
had a
series.
PT
You
Cruiser.
didn't.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
Preston Timothy
I've always
Cruiser.
wanted to meet someone who had a PT
Preston
Cruiser.
Timothy
Well, you know
Cruiser was midnight blue and the best car I ever had.
It was
Other than your
super cool.
Hyundai.
I feel like every time I see a PT Cruiser, I text Scott. I'm like, thinking of
It's
you.
so funny. I'm going to do it too from now on.
And there's a lot of stories to be told in that PT Cruiser.
Don't wanna hear
including-
That's
Yeah,
save
okay,
it.
hey,
for
hey.
next.
No. One that you were in the car for when a
that
bicyclist.
was a crazy night.
It's
that
all
was
about
crazy.
the uniforms.
Anyway,
But then Riggins
Yeah.
breaks bro code. I got to be honest. This is inexcusable.
Well, we're
and
going to talk about
Jason
this next
has
episode.
Screamed
but
Jason has screamed at Lyla.
yeah,
and
and was
chased
like,
her out
"Go
of the
away."
hospital. Yeah,
if they were on a break, it's the classic Ross and Rachel. It's like, it's not fair. You told her to go away.
I'm not even mad at I'm talking Riggins.
I know. I'm just saying. Yeah, Riggins is not the best. It's not his best work, but he loves her. It's the point is they are out there, and Minka has this gorgeous, really beautifully acted scene where she just is so pissed, and she's like, "What is fucking wrong with you?
Yeah.
Go see your best friend at the hospital, you dumb asshole!" And she's slapping him, and she's screaming, and she can't take it. And then, of
She
course,
says
it's
the
the
words,
classic.
"Why won't you help me?"
Yes,
And that was like, to me, like the most like heartbreaking because
Mm-hmm.
then I finally realized, oh, she's all alone
Yeah.
in this.
yeah.
Her mom and her dad are. Is that in this episode? Her mom and her dad are like having discussions with her, like how are you going to spend?
Is it this one?
Is it in the next one? Maybe.
Well, like, they
whatever.
continue.
She's got all this pressure where she's trying to get Jason to believe in himself,
And she doesn't know how to support him without sort of making it like the only way this is going to get better is if you get better. And I think that puts an undue pressure on you. But of course, it's the old tale as old as time. Slapping turns into kissing.
In the
Slapping
rain.
in the rain turns into kissing in the rain.
Yeah.
They share this incredibly passionate kiss.
I hate it. I hate every second of it.
I
Oh, so you
loved
put
it.
yourself in the
Well, we're gonna have to talk more about that later because I
We'll
want to
get
hear
into
about
it.
your sense of betrayal. We'll pick up where this left off.
Yeah, we did it. I think we're really getting the hang of this.
That felt good.
When are we going to pick up? No.
That's the end of the episode.
I know. I want to talk about this.
We can't. We're talk about it in the next one. There's plenty more
tons.
Lila
Okay,
and Riggins
okay,
kissing.
okay.
Spoiler
That's
alert.
fine. Here's
Let's
the
wrap
deal.
it up.
Here's the deal. There's some beautiful little moments.
Can't cut off Scott.
There's
Wrap
some
it up.
beautiful little moments that we didn't get to.
It's
That
been 2.5 hours.
it hasn't been. It hasn't even been 1 hour. It's almost an hour. Said the man with the sign that walked by the window a
there's
second
going to be
ago.
some golden nuggets. that
No.
fall by the wayside.
Here's one thing that I love is that after that whole thing happens, Smash is the one that leads Clear Eyes Full Hearts Can't Lose. He's back on board. He's part of the team. Coach gets home after that, the wind sprints. He gets into bed, and Tammy goes, "Where have you been?" It's 3 a.m. And he goes, "Practice." And she doesn't even flinch. And it's like the trust that they have in each other is like realigned kind of in that moment again, like sort of to me. But the Lyla earlier in the episode, her and Tim have a lot of scenes together in this episode. It just doesn't, the kissing just doesn't happen then.
Right.
She's been trying all episode, and she's like, "Hey, we're leading a prayer circle." And he turns to her and he's like, "What are we going to pray for?" Ooh.
Street to get his legs back and walk.
No.
Wow, it sounds
What
like
are we
me at
gonna
the
pray
restaurant again. God.
Oh, wait, what are we going to pray
only
for? A
have
new
one
spine
voice.
for Jay? A new spine for
hockey
Jay
puck?
was like, anyway.
And she's
sure.
like, "Don't tear me down just because you're wearing a tank top."
Fine. There's lots of things in this episode that we're not going to be able to talk about. But Lyla does feel the pressure. Those scenes with her parents are very important in this episode, too. Her mom's like, "It's your birthday. What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm going to see Jay in the hospital." And she's like, there has to be more to your life than Jason. You're so young. And her mom's right. Now, when I was a kid watching this show, I was like, let Lyla do what Lyla wants to do. But now as like a parent, I'm like, I would be hard pressed not to be. I would come from such a place of empathy, I would hope. But at the same time, I'm watching this mom, and I have empathy for the mother who's like scared for her own daughter. And then she's yelling at Buddy. She's like, you can take an 80-mile road trip to go try and get a quarterback for the Dillon Panthers, and you can't talk to your own daughter.
Yeah.
And he says, well, she's just going to get bored and move on anyway. It doesn't matter.
Harsh. And of course, Lila's listening at the top of the stairs.
And that takes me to the last thing I want to talk about this episode was the camera work in this episode. Exceptional. It always is. But like that scene where that's such a private moment when the two of them are talking, a show would have come in for coverage on that usually. What I mean by coverage is they would have gone downstairs and shot Brad Leland as Buddy Garrity talking and shot the mom talking as well, and they would have gotten the angles of that, and they would have shot Minka's reactions at the top of the stairs. Instead, this show chose to just put a camera up there and put them so in the background, almost out of focus, and she's just hearing this conversation. It was wonderful.
It's the best.
And at the end of the episode, when Aldous finally shows up at practice, when VooDoo Tatum walks onto the field, the practice starts the next morning, and the team is fired up, and everything is working so well.
Yeah.
Saracen's on his game. He's hitting throw after throw. Everybody's, pads are popping. And then VooDoo walks on the field, and you just know trouble's coming. And they do this low swoop across the football field up onto Aldous's face. And the look on his face, the way they shot it, just lets you know, like, what trouble is brewing and what's going to break this team apart next. And then we will talk about
We're
that.
We're going to break that
next
episode
week.
apart next week. Hello.
Sorry. I know.
Himself.
You know what, though? There is a lot that we didn't get to talk about.
And that's fine.
If anybody out there,
that's totally fine.
If anybody out there listening wants to let us know anything you'd like us to go back and revisit, please go to the Apple Podcast rate and review section. Subscribe to the show. Make sure that you let us know. If you have any questions, we would love to put you on the Slam and Sammy Mead 470 AM on your radio dial question segment that we're going to be bringing up. I've just pitched an idea. I just pitched an idea. Nobody, if you have any questions or if there's anything that you would like covered that we didn't cover.
If you want us to say anything to Scott,
yeah, sure.
in any capacity.
In
just
this episode or anywhere else, just let us know in the comments section there. And rate and review us while you're there. That would be awesome. And you, too, can be a part of It's Not Only Football,
okay,
Friday Night Lights and Beyond.
I really got to go.
You got to pee?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm busting.
This is Scott Porter on behalf of my two co-hosts,
Zach Gilford.
Mae Whitman.
We hope to see you back next week for It's Not Only Football, Friday Night Lights and Beyond. See ya!
Peace.